When I moved into Evergreen Ridge, I was looking for peace. The houses were neat, the lawns perfectly trimmed, and the little park in the center of the neighborhood seemed like a great place to take evening walks. My job kept me working from home most days. I figured an HOA might help keep the place orderly. I should have known better for the first few months. The HOA only sent me the usual noticized reminders about lawn maintenance, letters about approved paint colors, and invitations to community barbecues I never attended. I kept my head down, paid my dues, and didn't bother anyone. Then, one afternoon in early spring, I got an email from the HOA board with the subject line, Mandatory Community Safety Curfew. The rule that changed everything, the email explained. That's starting immediately. No resident was allowed outside their home after 8 p.m. without written permission from the HOA. The board claimed it was to reduce loitering, noise, and suspicious activity. They even said HOA security volunteers would patrol the neighborhood to enforce compliance. I read the email twice to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. This wasn't a gated military base. It was a suburban neighborhood in the United States. And here was an HOA trying to dictate when I could step outside my own front door. I replied to the board, "You have no legal authority to impose a curfew on private property. This is unconstitutional and will not be enforced against me." Stan, the HOA presidenta, stocky man with a perpetual smirk, replied within minutes, "Rules are rules. Break them and face consequences." My first violation, the very next evening, I was working late in my garage. Around 8:30 p.m., I realized I'd left my phone charger in my car. My car was parked in the driveway. I stepped out, walked the 10 feet to my car, and popped the door open. That's when I heard heavy footsteps. 3 men in reflective vests approached from the street, carrying flashlights and clipboards. "Sir, you're violating curfew," one of them barked. I blinked at them. "I'm standing on my own driveway. This is HOA property after hours," another said, shining his flashlight directly in my face. "No," I said, brushing past him. "This is my property. Get off it." The third guy, tall and wiry, stepped closer. "You need to come with us to the clubhouse to sign a citation." Laughed in disbelief. Not happening. The assault things escalated quickly. When I tried to walk back inside, the tall one grabbed my arm. I yanked it free, but then the stocky guy shoved me hard enough to make me stumble. "Stop resisting," he barked, as if I were under arrest. That was their mistake. I've taken self-defense classes since college, and muscle memory kicked in. I planted my feet, shoved the stocky guy back, and blocked the wiry one's attempt to grab me again. The third guy tried to circle behind me, but I pivoted and kept them all in front of me. "This is assault," I warned. "Get off my property before you regret it." Instead, they moved in again. I threw the wiry guy's hands aside, stepped in, and delivered a firm push to his chest that sent him staggering back into the grass. "I'm calling the cops," I said, pulling out my phone. The Cali put the call on speaker so they could hear every word. 911. "What's your emergency?" dispatcher asked. "This is my name. I live at address."
At
3 men from my HOA just assaulted me on my own driveway. They're claiming to enforce a fake curfew. Please send officers. The dispatcher's tone sharpened. "Stay on the line, sir. Units are en route." The 3 security volunteers suddenly looked nervous. The wiry one muttered, "We were just doing our job." "No," I said, "you were trespassing, harassing, and assaulting a homeowner. That's not your job." The arrival of the police within 6 minutes, 2 patrol cars rolled up. The officers separated us, taking statements from both sides. I explained everything. The curfew email, the threats, the assault. I even showed them the text from Stan saying rules are rules. Break them and face consequences. The officers turned to the security volunteers. "You have no legal authority to detain or touch anyone," one officer said firmly. "You're not police. Can't enforce a curfew on private property." They tried to argue, claiming the HOA bylaws allowed them to protect the community. The officer shook his head. "Bylaws don't override state law. What you did tonight is assault and trespassing." All 3 were cited on the spot, turning the tables the next morning. I drafted an email to every homeowner in Evergreen Ridge. I attached the police report, a copy of the curfew email, and a link to the HOA charter showing there was no such rule. I ended with, If they can do this to me, they can do it to you. This must stop. The reaction was explosive. Within 48 hours. My inbox was full of angry responses from neighbors, people who'd been quietly enduring other power plays from Stan and his crew. A petition to hold a special election circulated almost overnight. The showdown meeting, the HOA meeting that followed, was packed. Stan sat at the head of the table, arms crossed, while the room buzzed with tension. I stood up, holding the police. Report. This is what happens when you put unqualified people in positions of authority they were never meant to have. Last week, 3 of your security volunteers assaulted me for stepping onto my own driveway after 8 p.m. This curfew is illegal, unenforceable, and downright dangerous. People in the crowd shouted their agreement. One elderly resident stood and said, "I've lived here 20 years, and I've never been told when I can or can't leave my own house." By the time the meeting ended, the vote was unanimous. Stan and the entire security committee were removed from the board. Legal fallout, I wasn't done. I filed a civil suit against the 3 men for assault, and because they'd acted under the direction of the HOA, the association itself was named in the complaint. My lawyer explained that their actions could also be considered false imprisonment under state law. Facing mounting legal bills and public outrage, the HOA settled. They agreed to pay my medical costs, minor as they were, legal fees, and a small settlement for emotional distress. More importantly, they amended the HOA charter to explicitly ban any rule that attempted to limit residents' freedom of movement. Freedom restored today. I can walk outside whenever I want, whether it's to grab my phone charger, take a midnight stroll, or just breathe the cool night air without a pack of self-appointed enforcers lurking in the shadows. And whenever I see one of those former security volunteers, they quickly look the other way. I'm the guy who ended their fake curfew, and they know better than to test me again.